Welcome to the Lethal Dispatch. Join Lethal Ted and Lethal Eddie to discuss all things tabletop role-playing. Featuring me, Torin Grimblade, your invincible, powerful, lethal but somehow modest spokesman for lethal fantasy games. Please hit the like, subscribe, and ring that bell. Join us on Instagram, Facebook, X, and Discord. Do it now, or I will destroy you. What? Oops. Could you pretty please just subscribe? Hey Eddie, I told you I could do it nicely. I am a born diplomat. These mortals love me. Anyway, let's get started. Take it away, guys.
Hey George, how you doing tonight?
Oh, not too bad. Thanks for having me on, Ted. It's good to see your face again. It's been a while since we gamed together.
Yeah, back in Gamehole.
Yep, and a little bit online.
Yeah, we did do a bit online. That was fun. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what you've been doing, what your background is, and I know you did a little bit of your own podcast, and I got to see that and saw some of where you came from. But could you tell us a little bit about when you started gaming, when this sort of hobby latched onto you?
Yeah, it was unlike a lot of people that came to gaming through fantasy novels. I actually went the other way around. Um, One of my best friends in school lived next door to my grandma, and we were walking home from school one day. It's I can't remember if it was spring semester of fifth grade or the first semester of sixth grade. I just remember it was 1980, and he says, "Hey, you want to go over to Chad's and play Dungeons and Dragons?" Well, I had no idea what he's talking about, so I'm like, "Sure." So went over, and it was like nothing. Of course, I was 10 or 11 at the time. I had never seen anything like it, and just been kind of doing it ever since.
Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about our experiences. That's very similar to
Very
my
similar.
experience because I came home from baseball practice and my buddy was like, hey, my brother is and his friends are playing in the basement Dungeons and Dragons, and I was like,
Okay.
what? But I could hear them down there, and they were literally, yelling and acting out these parts like a Shakespeare play. And I was, like, wow, what is going on? And then I saw the dice and the figures, and it had me right there pretty fast. Is that the only game you played when you were young?
Yeah, we started out with the Holmes box set with the basic blue book. My first purchase was a year later when I got the Moldvay and Cook basic and expert sets. And a couple years later, I moved on to advanced, and I was playing advanced first edition with one group of friends while I was running the basic expert edition with a completely different set of friends.
I remember
And,
getting those two games, and it was
Mhm.
amazing how different they actually were and the way they were
right.
built. So it
For
got a
sure.
little confusing. I actually bought it thinking it was sort of adding on to AD&D, and then I was like, wait, this is a completely different game.
Right.
So that's
Yeah, luckily I had no problems keeping them separate, but that might be a little bit due to my touch of autism that I've got that I just discovered about years later. But as far as other games, I tried a little bit of Star Frontiers back in the day, and it wasn't until I was in my mid 30s that I really tried anything other than D&D of any
wow.
Oh
type.
wow. Yeah, that's a
And
little different experience.
again, I think that was due to my touch of autism and being hyper focused on something.
hmm Oh yeah, it totally makes sense. I know I had a bit of a different experience, but I think it was because my friends were into a bunch of other games, and so we just got to try a lot of stuff. So it was a little different experience, but I mean, I think long long run Dungeons and Dragons has definitely been was kind of my focus later. After my high school years, that's for sure. You know.
And nowadays, there are dozens of games I want to try out, even for just short term 4 or 5, 6 month campaigns, but there's just not enough time.
So how did that develop? I mean, obviously you said you were playing Dungeons and Dragons for a long time, and what do you think was kind of linchpin that kind of sent you a different direction?
Um, well, I met some new friends in the early 2000s, and one of them wanted to run a Buffy the Vampire Slayer game from Eden Studios.
Hmm.
So we tried that. We played a little bit of Exalted, and that was about the time that I discovered that I had a touch of autism, and realizing I had it allowed me to look at things a lot differently and know how to deal with stuff.
Hmm.
And since then, I've tried all kinds of different fantasy, mostly various fantasy different games. Not a few other genres. I've played some Star Wars Saga from WotC,
Hmm.
a little bit of Castles and Crusades, Adventures Dark and Deep. Um, Drawing a blank now that I'm on the spot. Well, I'm not on the spot. I knew this was coming. Um, but as far as D&D, like I said, I started with the Holmes and I bought the Moldvay Cook Basic Expert in first edition. When second edition came out, I immediately switched to that. When third edition came out, I immediately switched to that. When 3.5 came out, I resisted because I'm like, what the hell? This has only been out a couple of years. Why are you making some changes?
Yeah, I remember that.
But eventually, everything new coming out was for it. So I probably switched about 2006, I guess, something like that. Um, I looked at Pathfinder when it was in its beta form, but it was so similar to 3.5 that I was looking up every single role to see if it was the same, if it was tweaked slightly or completely changed.
Hmm.
So I never jumped over to Pathfinder for that reason.
What about 4E and then on to 5E? Did you make those jumps?
I've never played a single session of 4E.
Hmm.
I would like to play a short term campaign just for the experience, despite not hearing very many positive things about it. I know I got one buddy said he liked 4E. It's his least favorite of all the editions, but he still enjoyed playing it. And I didn't really jump onto 5E. I tried running a campaign, and we didn't even make second or third level. And I'm like, I can't run this.
Right, understand.
So just
I've heard a lot that the fourth edition is very similar to what Matt Colville in his MCDM game is actually portraying. He's actually gone back and basically redoing fourth edition. That's
yeah,
what I've sort of
yeah.
heard through the
The only
grapevine.
thing I've heard about his is you don't have to make attack rolls. You automatically hit and roll damage.
Yeah, there's no attack rolls from my understanding because people
That
don't,
way you're not wasting an action.
and nobody likes to miss. So,
Yeah, well, it's
sort of participation trophies all the way around is sort of
exactly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know Pathfinder 2 is kind of very similar to 4E in a lot of ways. I know they took a lot from 4E in their development of the second edition of Pathfinder as well, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah,
But
I've no experience with that at all.
yeah,
Um,
I did end up going down that Pathfinder. After 3.5, I ended up going down that Pathfinder road when I moved here to Colorado. So ended up doing a lot of volunteering for Pathfinder Society play and stuff like that over the last 15 years.
mhm.
So that's where I ended up going, and then of course, that's kind of where I met Ted. So, um,
So, George, as you and I mean, I've heard many people call you hard charging George Fields. Where'd that come from?
That's all Jolly Blackburn's fault. Um, I think it was issue 218 of Knights of the Dinner Table is where Hard Charging Fields made his first appearance, and I had nothing to do with any of that. The only thing I knew about it ahead of time, and I didn't know that it was coming to this. He once asked me, what was the name of one of your favorite D&D characters you've ever had? Uh, well, I had a second edition character named Solarian Half Moon that I really enjoyed. So he throws that name in a comic and kills the character off. And so my KODT version storms out of the room all pissed off. And
So, your KODT version? Is it as handsome as you are, or did he get the right likeness there?
Much more so. Yeah, my wife would disagree with that, but
So how many issues have you been in? Do you know?
maybe a dozen. They're mostly cameos, and pretty much almost every one of them. When I exit, I leave all pissed off, which is kind of a humorous recurring theme.
Which is
But
interesting for you because I've really never experienced you being mad or having that kind of a
yeah,
temper.
yeah, exactly. It's almost the opposite of me. Uh, One of my favorite lines is couple issues after that first appearance, Gary Jackson and the rest of Heart Eight show up, and they're standing outside the game room where BA is running his game, and there's a whole crowd of people out there asking questions. Hey, what about this? Or like no rules questions, and will you take an intern? I'll work for product, and everybody's asking him game stuff, and HC's back there. What are you doing for dinner tonight? Which that is exactly like me, because one of my favorite things to do is meet up with friends tonight for dinner. Actually, tomorrow I'm driving over about an hour from home, and I'm meeting a gaming buddy of mine for lunch before my son and I go off and do a few other things.
Nice.
These
And
are fun.
we had Brent Chumley on just a few
Yep,
sessions
I
back.
just had dinner with him a couple nights ago, about 30 minutes north of here.
Yeah, how did you meet Brent?
Um, have you ever heard of Fifth Epoch Publishing and their RPG Metal Magic and Lore?
I have heard of that. Hmm.
Somehow I started talking to Vito Pandolfo, who runs that, and he was wanting me to start possibly doing some writing and stuff. And Brent was his main artist. And a couple of years ago, he told me, Brent Chumley, he's going to be at GaryCon with a booth. I want you to meet up with him. Like, okay, no problem. And so we ended up meeting up at GaryCon, and I started gaming with him. And we were playing Metal Magic and Lore, but we're actually, for reasons, we're switching over to Basic Fantasy and work. And Brent is working on our own thing with that, with a little bit of help me from myself and a couple of the other players. But the funniest thing about that story is my son Elias went with me to GaryCon that year, and we're standing in line, driving 5 hours to Lake Geneva through the rain, and we're in line for almost an hour. We're finally getting really close to grab our badges and move on. And anybody that knows me well knows that I'm a full time smartass, and my son has inherited that from me. So I looked and said, "Well, Elias, this is taking too long. Let's go home." He's like, "Yep, I guess we're going to drive uh, back home in rain for 5 hours." And the guy standing in front of us turned and chuckled, says, "Yeah, I drove 5 hours in the rain up here today too." Like, "Oh, where are you from?" Vandalia, Illinois. Like, "Oh, I'm from Sandoval." He's like, "Hey, are you the guy Brent Chumley told me about?" And he's one of the other players in our Metal Magic and Lore game.
Oh,
Wow,
that's cool.
small world sometimes. George, you've written some adventures. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've got 3 published adventures for Hackmaster with Kinzer and Company. And I've also got a short little 5-page thing that was published by Brian Fitzpatrick that had the Mobius Adventures. He's another guy from Colorado Springs. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us.
Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
So
to hear
yeah,
that.
he actually published me first, and he beat out my first Hackmaster adventure by like 3 months, even though I had written the other stuff long before.
Mhm.
It,
yeah.
I'm planning on. I need to get back to writing because I've been idle for too long, and the past several years it just seems like there's so much going on. My son has moved in with us a couple of years ago, getting him set up for college and all that stuff. And
So you've done. I think you've done some play testing and other things. Is that correct with them as well?
Yeah, actually, my first play testing was actually with Wizards of the Coast in during third edition. I'm one of the very few playtesters listed in the third edition Book of Isle Darkness.
Oh, cool.
Oh wow, I have that book. That's an interesting book.
Yep,
That would
and
not be allowed today.
yeah, yeah. Mine go
For
through the
sure it
list. You'll
wouldn't.
see my name, then you'll see Jeff Grubb, and the next name is my son's mother.
Oh, cool.
So I joke with her that she let that book and Jeff Grubb come between us. But yeah, we split long ago. That's unrelated to any of this, but
But it's a good joke.
oh yeah, it's funny, and we still get along because it's so much easier for our son that way.
I know
Now,
that. Oh, sorry. Go
go
ahead.
ahead. One thing we didn't touch on is how I came talking about the various games, how I got involved in Hackmaster to begin with.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
point.
Friends of mine went to Gen Con, and my friend Buddy came back with a brand new setting called the Kingdoms of Calamar because he wanted to run something that nobody knew anything about. And I never really looked at it, but the maps, I've always been a fan of maps, and I just loved the maps of that.
Hmm.
And of course, he ended up never using it. So,
What are the things you
so after,
liked?
yeah,
I got a whole bunch of stuff I've never used.
yeah. If you look behind me, you can see a whole bunch of stuff that I'm pretty sure a lot of that's never been used. But when Kingdoms of Kalmar was released in hardcover third edition, I remembered that, and so I bought that and started going through it. And so in an article somewhere, I saw something about playtesting for Calamar, and I was more interested in getting stuff before it was released and actually giving feedback on it. So I went on to the forums and all that stuff and got involved in forums and was able to start getting files to look at. And I started reading and getting feedback on them. And of course, they had their Hackmaster forums. Of course, it wasn't the new Hackmaster yet, it was the old original retro clone, which I ignored that and just paid attention to the Calamar D&D forums. And so fast forward to around 2008, I had a bunch of the Calamar third edition stuff and had a new DM that I was gaming under, and his campaigns all started out great. And by fourth or fifth level, they just went crazy, nuts, stupid. And I was still playing because I got to play, and then I had a dwarf cleric at sixth level. And we're playing 3.5, so I get to pick out a new feat. Like, cool. Well, after about 3 hours and looking through every single book we had, I still couldn't decide what feat to take, and decided I think I'm done playing third edition. So next game session, I had him kill my character off, and I dropped out of the group. And I was honestly considering hanging up my DAS bag at that point. That was about the time Packmaster Basic was about to be released, and everything I was reading about at the time I loved, so I pre-ordered it, and that's how I got involved with Hackmaster,
That's awesome.
and started running events for that at GaryCon in 2011, and accidentally started making a name for myself in those circles. Wasn't intentional. I just wanted to go run a bunch of games.
You are pretty well known in the Hackmaster circles,
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
and you're
even had one of the Kenzer guys said that I know their products better than they do.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. I think Ted can relate to that a lot.
is that all you play right now? Is Hackmaster?
Right now, I'm running a Hackmaster game that is temporarily on hold for reasons I won't get into, is because an illness with one of the players. And in Brent's game, we're working on the basic role playing from Chaosium.
Well,
Oh
So
wow!
those
That's
are
cool.
those are the only two things I've got going on right now.
that's pretty neat. So
do have a lot of stuff I'd love to do.
Well, and you are one of the few people that actually have a copy of our beta test
Hmm.
book, and I know you've just recently got that because we just went there, and you and I have talked a lot about that though, so even you recognize that some of our discussions have led to things in that book.
Oh yeah, I've recognized just going through. I recognize a lot of things that you and I have talked about over the few years, and it, I gotta admit, it made me smile.
yeah, yeah. There's a lot of things in games. I mean, not just I mean, you talked about Hackmaster, but I mean, there's a lot of things in Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder, all the different games that have been really annoying and
Oh
difficult to
yeah,
deal
I
with.
mean, no game is perfect. No game's ever going to be perfect. There's always something that's going to bug somebody. If you think, "Oh, this game is perfect," you're deluded or something.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. We've tried to, Everett and I got together, and even the discussions I had with you is sort of talk about the things that don't work and that we hear players complain about and that we struggle with, and that's sort of where Lethal Fantasy came from.
Right. I know that's something that you and I talked about quite a bit in the past, and it's really bad in systems that still use combat rounds.
Oh, for sure.
I was playing in an online 5th edition campaign, and combat would come up, and I it got to the point to where I actually started timing people, including myself. Like, well, I know what I'm going to do when my turn comes up, and my turns would take 45 seconds or a minute. And some people, oh, it's my turn. And I'm thinking, yeah, you knew your turn was coming up. Oh, what am I going to do? Well, I can. Oh, I'm just going to do this again, like I did last round.
Right. And those, those, one of the things we talked about is that those kind of cyclical rounds or turns or whatever you want to call them, they create that sort of everyone knows what
Right.
order they're in, so they fall asleep until it's their turn, and then suddenly they don't know what to
Yeah,
do.
exactly. And
Yeah.
I ran a 3.5 campaign a few years ago. And when combat would come up, I would say, okay, John, it's your turn. Brian, you're next. Be ready. John would take his turn. All right, Brian, what are you going to do? Travis, you're up next. What are you going to do? And inevitably, there'd be one or two people. Oh, it's my turn. Yeah, I told you you're up next when the last person was taking their turn.
Yeah,
Right.
I definitely have experienced that. I mean, when I'm sitting at the table and I say, "Okay, you're on deck," you know,
Yeah,
I mean, it's a baseball term, but man, it definitely
exactly.
applies to round-based role-playing games for sure.
Well,
So,
and movement is one of the big bugaboos we always found because
Yeah,
this time stop situation where, you're one person makes an entire move or a long move while the other people just stand there in this kind of
and watch them.
right, and
yeah,
and there's no reaction to that unless you get attacked or there's something else like that. So it
Right.
just creates this, well, totally unrealistic movement scenario that people metagame and take advantage of.
yeah, it's very anticlimactic. A lot of times you have this big old baddie, and then all of a sudden everyone's surrounding it and beating it down before it even gets to its initiative order. It's
Yeah, like
just
one
unrealistic.
example I like to use is like you're hiding behind a tree, you load a crossbow, you step out and point at a guard. He he succeeds at not being surprised, so you guys roll initiative. You got your crossbow up and ready to shoot. He wins initiative, so he gets to run 30 feet and ring a gong to sound off the alarm before you can even go click.
Exactly.
Right, or run up and whack you in the head.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
So I mean, that's the frustration. That's why we've adopted the second by second time, and everybody is moving simultaneously at the table.
And it keeps everybody involved at all times because you can't. Oh, okay. I'm done attacking. I'm going to sit here and play on my phone for 5 minutes so everybody else takes their turn. Like, no, that's not going to work because the next second you're you can be doing something again.
Right, and
Yeah.
that second by second thing is useful, but it's still, ultimately when those numbers become static, somebody attacks every 7 seconds or every 8 seconds or
Mhm.
every 9 seconds. It still gets you still eventually sort of recreate that turn scenario.
Yeah. It's very
Right.
predictable in those
And
situations.
glancing through the PDF, I've seen you're doing something to take care of that as well.
We are. We're making it variable where there's this competition, um, sort of to see who gets to go next, and everyone gets an escalating opportunity to be able to be the next person to act. But you're never at zero, so you could act twice in a row, which we've seen in playtesting really keeps people focused on the table. Because when you got
Mhm.
that monster against you, I mean, in most games, including even the second by second, if you went, the person, if they have a similar weapon in front of you, they're definitely going to get an opportunity before you get to go again.
Right.
And we're eliminating that because I don't think that's how combat really works. You could certainly have an opportunity, and we look at it like that. It's an opportunity that arises based upon this combat dance that they're engaged in.
Right.
Yeah. The other part of games that I think is really slows things down, I mean, is how criticals work in most games. They just don't seem to be really critical.
Yeah. There's times in almost every game I've seen where a critical, everybody gets said, all right, net 20 critical hit. All right, let's see what happens. Oh, nothing.
Right, you roll a 1 and a 2 and it doubles damage, or you roll low on the chart and all that happens is it says no further effect, or maybe one
Yeah,
additional dice. So that acceleration really becomes kind of a downer at the table.
exactly.
So, and you and I
Man.
talked about that at length many
Oh,
times.
yes. Several times. And,
So,
not quite specifically critical hits, but when my very first session, no, wasn't a session, just something I read about when 5e had come out, where I think bards had this thing where if they hit an opponent, it would rally his allies. All right, so the bard, I'm going to use my rally attempt on this attack. All right, you hit, you do a point of damage. All your allies are rallied. Yay! Barbarian comes up, does a critical hit for 35 points of damage. All right, good job, man.
yeah, no rally there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, bards are kind of an interesting deal. We don't have bards in our initial, but we're already working on developing that.
Hmm.
But that's a tough one because they're an odd class and they
Right.
really create some sort of weird dynamics in any game, I think.
And the other example where it was the first time I actually played was we're like in this ballroom fighting ghouls, and a bard got cornered off on one side by two ghouls all by himself. But he used a free action to help the guy all the way across the room with some ability without affecting the way that he could combat the two ghouls that were attacking him. Because that makes sense.
Right. I mean the action economies that they've come up with just, I mean, that's
Yeah.
why I've struggled with a lot of games, and ultimately why one day I threw my dice at the ground, and I think I told you, George, and I told everyone, is I'm done. I'm gonna make a game.
Hmm.
Because I've been doing this too long, and I might as well make what I want to play and what I think other people might want to play.
Yeah, taking our experience and
Sounds
putting it
like you had
together.
some good responses at Genghis Khan.
Oh, yeah, for sure. We had some great responses about how our game system works compared to what's out there. I mean, for me, one of the frustrations that I've experienced over the last few months, especially because it's more so in the second edition of Pathfinder, is all the conditions that are constantly being put on. I mean, if you're playing in Foundry VTT or something like that, where you can just, drag it onto a character where it's a little bit easier is one thing. But if you're having to manually calculate conditions as part of your round actions and everything else, it just slows the game way down and is really an annoying thing for a game master to try to track. So it's really, um, I mean,
Even in early D&D, they didn't have conditions. Oh, you were poisoned. Okay, I'm poisoned. Now you have the condition poisoned.
yeah, I know. If you're lucky, you get the condition poison. In other words, if you happen to actually fail the save, and then you've got all these different levels, poison 1, poison 2,
Yeah,
poison 3, it starts stacking up. And then, how do you deal with that? Every poison's different mechanics. And that's
yeah,
one thing we
exactly.
noticed. The spells are different mechanics. The conditions are different mechanics. So everyone's like, well, how does that work? So they're having to suddenly get the book out and look, how does that condition work? So there's a lot of just just congruity, I would say.
I mean, that's one of the things that we even had people flipping to our book at Genghis Khan. And one gentleman was looking at it and he's reading the spell and he's like, well, what are the attack dice and what are whatever? And we're like, our attack dice are the same for every spell. We don't change it spell to spell like a lot of the systems do. So it makes it much easier and it flows much better.
Right.
Yeah, I think,
Like I said, when Pathfinder came out, I was having to look up every damn thing to see if it was the same, tweaked, or completely different from 3.5.
yeah. Yeah, it took them a couple of years to finally get that moved over to their own complete version, back in the day. And I think that I
Now,
didn't
now
end up starting till that new book had just come out. So I think it's when
now
I
you,
switched
you've been
over.
talking about second edition a little bit. Are you talking about the original second edition or the remaster?
I'm talking about um, the remaster that they just released.
Well,
Yeah, I've got some of those books as well. I haven't really dived into them yet.
Yeah, when the second edition came out, I'd already run, hundreds of games, a couple hundred games for PF1. So I'm like, oh man, now I've got to jump right in and learn the second edition. And it was different enough that, man, I had to get my feet wet real quick on that game. I think I had GM'd more games than I had played. And that unfortunately put me at a little bit of a disadvantage in the beginning because, I mean, there's so many new things to memorize,
Right.
mechanics wise and everything else. And so, I mean, we want to be able to simplify the combat quite a bit, I think, on our end and get rid of all the, strange condition type, things that we had to deal with in other games, make it all about the dice, try to, reduce the amount of math that's being done at the table with, different modifiers and everything else that we see in a lot of the games that are out there right now.
Right.
So, yeah.
So one of the things is, George, I know, when I did this and when I said we're getting ready to launch in June, I've been sort of hitting you up to write for me because, I mean, you've run games for me and obviously, those games have been great fun and I love the adventures that I've seen that you wrote for Hackmaster. So,
Thank you.
you've agreed to do one of our introductory adventures for Lethal Fantasy.
Yep. In and around the village of Gavensburg.
Oh, cool.
You told me that name, and that I like the name a lot. That actually even just sort of stirs up that kind of medieval village feel just from
Mhm.
the name.
Yeah, I've had the name in my head for years and just never done anything with it. And when I started doing stuff with Calamar, if you look through the Calamar Atlas, they've got damn near every village named. So I just kind of kept that on the back burner.
Well, we're honored that you'll throw it at us and let us use it because we're gonna make it part of our world because that
sure.
setting is coming. One of the things you asked me about that when you were talking about preparing it was how hard it was going to be to convert characters between our game and Hackmaster.
Right.
And so, I mean, I think you've probably seen that by going through. We share a lot of things. We have
Right.
opposed roles, attack and defense.
Right. The opposed rolls is the way to go, in my opinion. After playing attack roll versus defense roll, I hate rolling to hit an armor class. Because if
sure.
you're fighting a monster with an extremely high armor class, you're pretty much screwed. Or if you get a character with a crappy armor class, you're pretty much screwed.
And it just doesn't account for that sort of out of the blue opportunity that could come up.
Exactly.
Well,
Exactly.
like how Smog died in The Hobbit, right?
Right.
I mean, that could never happen with a high DC.
No,
He
he'd
had
be
to go
unhittable.
low for that black arrow.
Exactly. I mean, even with a natural 20 being an automatic hit, that doesn't mean it's going to be a crit in any, like in 3.5, you got to roll to confirm it. And
Yeah, PF2, I mean, you're not guaranteed. I mean, they changed up the critical system in PF2 to where it just has to be 10 different. But in a situation where you're rolling at 20 and it's not high enough to hit the creature, then it's not a critical.
yeah,
And so, I mean, there goes any chance on something that's got a really high armor class of even making a dent, So it's
Right.
that part's a little bit bummer. I mean, yeah, you have a higher chance of getting a critical, but once again, we go back to the whole letdown thing. where, you roll 3 points of damage and then you're like, oh, that's not the crit I expected.
Yeah, and that all comes back. I think we're all here agreed. We all started in D&D, and those original stats, strength, intelligence, those are what we know and what we're comfortable with, and I think it makes it easier when we keep those things to convert
Right.
all of those systems to our system, and we haven't changed that. I'm sure you've seen all
Right.
the statistics stayed the same, and basically have the same kinds of modifiers.
Yep. Very similar. I did notice that. I didn't study the charts intensely, but I did give them a good glancing as I was going through the PDF.
Right, and we've really done, and one of the things that again, this is something you and I talked about. We've really gone further with removing the ability to min max and have drop
Oh, yeah,
stats
for
and
sure.
those
Mhm.
things, because we've made pretty much every statistic is
Important.
important for
Right.
every class. Um, and-
Outside of
and so-
appearance.
well, we have appearance, but again, that's a reference stat, is the way we consider it. It's just something,
Yeah.
if somebody wants it, they can use it to sort of reference how attractive they are, but we've removed it from having any effect upon the actual game.
Yeah. Just no mechanics for it.
Right. There's no mechanics for it at all. In fact, the description in the book says if you want to disregard it, because it doesn't have any effect. It's something that you can roll, and if you want to have it as a reference for how attractive you are, that's fine. Because some people, that seems to be important too. We just
Mhm.
didn't think it had any place being an actual thing, because I think charisma is very different than attractiveness,
Oh, absolutely.
For
and
sure.
so we use charisma a lot. We just don't use the appearance stat really for
You-
anything.
And we had
Yeah. When I was toying around with the system, I was going to have two substats under charisma. One, personality, like how friendly you are, how well people like you. Another one, leadership, of how well people will listen to you as
Mhm.
leader type.
Right, and that's
Both of
similar to
those are
what
easily affected by charisma.
that's similar to what we did, except we sort of moved those to skills, to where we have like a performance skill, and performance controls a whole lot of things, as opposed to having, diplomacy and oration and all those kind of things. We sort of narrowed down those things, so you don't have quite so many skills to manage that all basically do the same thing.
Thank you for joining us for the Lethal Dispatch. We value your feedback and comments. Please like and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss updates on the Lethal Fantasy Tabletop role-playing game. Join us on Facebook, Instagram, X, TikTok. Join our Discord channel to chat directly with Lethal Ted and Lethal Eddie and find out what comes next. Lethal Fantasy, the evolution of the tabletop experience.